Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari 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 Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada.
Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 38th verse. Sukha dukkhe same krutva labha labhau jaya jayau tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. The meaning of this verse: do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. So the interesting part of this verse is that fight for the sake of fighting. Now what does this exactly mean? That is explained by Srila Prabhupada in the purport to this verse he has written. He says, Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting because he means here Krishna desires the battle. So fight for the sake of fighting means Arjuna should fight because Krishna wants this battle to be fought by Arjuna. So when we understand this central point, Arjuna should fight because Krishna wants the battle, then Srila Prabhupada says there is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or gain, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. This is exactly what is called as Krishna consciousness. You do what Krishna wants you to do. Then Srila Prabhupada says that everything should be done only for the sake of Krishna is transcendental consciousness. We all work with a certain type of consciousness. So our way of working should be with transcendental consciousness or spiritual Krishna consciousness or Krishna consciousness. So in such activities done in Krishna consciousness or transcendental consciousness, there is no reaction to any material activities. No reaction. Arjuna is thinking, I will do great sin by killing my kinsman in the battlefield. Or how can I kill Bhishma and Drona? So it is being explained here by understanding that Krishna wants this battle and acting in that consciousness or fighting in that consciousness, Arjuna is not going to get any reaction, no reaction at all. It is in fact spiritual activity. So Srila Prabhupada says, he who acts for his own sense gratification, sense enjoyment, sense pleasure, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to the reactions, good or bad. Somebody works in a consciousness of goodness, sattvic consciousness. I should do my duty. This is my specific duty. Then the results or the reactions are there, but they are good reactions. One is able to elevate himself to the heavenly planets or higher planets, higher position. But if somebody due to passion, out of jealousy, out of enviousness, out of greed, like Duryodhana, they are engaging in this fighting, then they get reaction which is bad reaction. They will not elevate themselves. But anybody who surrenders to Krishna or surrenders himself in activities of Krishna consciousness is not obliged or is not having any reaction, is not a debtor to anyone, as in the ordinary course of events. So in the Bhagavatam it is explained, anybody who surrendered to Mukunda, Krishna, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor or no longer obliged to anybody, not to the devatas, not to the sages, not to the people, not to kinsmen, not to humanity, not to forefathers, nobody. Completely free from all karma. That is the way of working in Krishna consciousness. Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 39th verse. Esha te abhihita sankhye buddhir yoge tvimam shrunu buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. The meaning of this verse: thus far I have declared to you the analytical knowledge of Sankhya philosophy. Now listen to the knowledge of yoga, whereby one works without fruitive result. O son of Pritha, when you act by such intelligence, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. Now here, two things are mentioned: Sankhya and Buddhi. Sankhya Yoga. So far, whatever Krishna has explained to Arjuna is called Sankhya Yoga. And now onwards, another another 10-15 verses, Krishna will explain how to work in Buddhi Yoga. Now, what is Sankhya Yoga? What is Buddhi Yoga? That Prabhupada explains. Sankhya here refers to the philosophy which describes the real nature of the soul. Krishna has described that. What is the nature of the soul in the verses so far? The spiritual nature of the soul. Soul means you, real person, the real person inside the body. Body is material characteristics, material nature of material quality. The soul or you, the real person inside the body, is completely spiritual, completely transcendental to this body, to matter, is deathless, is birthless, is indestructible, is inconceivable, is invisible, is so many characteristics. So, Sankhya Yoga means analytically understanding, by analytical study. What is body? What is soul? What is matter? What is spirit? This analysis has been done by Krishna very nicely. Now, Arjuna is being instructed in Buddhi Yoga. What is Buddhi Yoga? Buddhi Yoga is engaging one's intelligence in working without fruitive results. In the translation itself, it is said, you act by intelligence, such intelligence by which you can free yourself from the bondage of works, because this knowledge of this Buddhi Yoga is that knowledge by which one works without fruitive result. Any activity we do, why is there reaction? It is because of our fruitive mentality. What is fruitive mentality? I am doing something so that I get some result which I can enjoy. Now, there is a fundamental flaw in this type of thinking. What is the fundamental flaw? That any activity we do, the result actually belongs to Krishna, not to the performer of the work. How do we understand this? Just like you call a carpenter home and you give him all the tools, you give him the design, you tell him what is to be done, you give him wood, you give him everything, facility for working, everything you give. At the end of, let's say you tell him make a table, he makes a beautiful table. Then he cannot say, my labor, I have worked so hard, this table belongs to me. No, it belongs to you who have engaged him in that activity. Now, still, he is entitled to what is called as labor charges. Similarly, when we do an activity in this world, everything that we utilize actually is given by Krishna. The very body which is an instrument for the activity, your own hands, your own eyes, your own intelligence, everything is given by Krishna. Whatever you are using as the resources for doing that activity, everything, none of them you have manufactured, everything is given by Krishna. Is created by Krishna's material nature. So you have not done anything. So it ultimately the result belongs to Krishna means it's very easy to understand by this example of table and carpenter. Similarly, Krishna is telling the result you should not take, you should offer it to Krishna. But then what about your maintenance? How will you maintain yourself if you offer the result to Krishna? That is, Krishna says, I am the maintainer regardless of whatever you may do. Krishna maintains everybody. Krishna is the maintainer because he is the only maintainer. So this understanding by which one works using intelligence, this requires intelligence. So that Krishna is going to explain now, the buddhi yoga. Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 40th verse. Neha bhikramanashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. The meaning of this verse is, in this endeavor, there is no loss, there is no diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Krishna is describing buddhi yoga. Buddhi yoga is same as acting in Krishna consciousness. Acting in Krishna consciousness. So, Srila Prabhupada says, activity in Krishna consciousness or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of any sense gratification is the highest transcendental quality of work. It's already explained, by working in buddhi yoga, there is no reaction. One is freed from bondage of work. That is already explained in the previous verse. Now here, further Krishna is telling that such activity performed in Krishna consciousness is the highest transcendental quality of work. There is no loss in doing such work. What is the meaning of there is no loss? Here it means whatever work is done in Krishna consciousness, whatever progress you make in what? In self-realization, in progressing towards ultimate goal of life, attaining Krishna, Krishna's abode, Krishna's association. Towards that goal, you have to work in Krishna consciousness to attain that goal ultimately. So if you begin, even if you make whatever progress towards the end of life, let us say, one could not complete. So whatever progress you have made, it is carried forward to your next life, and in your next life you begin from where you left off from your previous life. Let's say somebody has made 10% progress. This person is guaranteed to get another opportunity in the next life for continuing this Krishna conscious activities from the point of 11%. Whereas you take any material activity that one does in this life, whatever money you earn, can you take it with you to your next life? No. Whatever degrees you get by doing so much of hard work and studying in college, school, college, university, can you take those degrees to your next life? You cannot. Whatever fame you have, you might have been a very famous, let's say, talented artist. Can you take that fame with you? No. You have developed, some skill you have developed in, let's say, painting. Can you take that skill with you in your next life? You cannot. So, whatever you do materially in this life, it is not going to come with you for the next life. So, everything material is finished when you quit this body. Finished. It cannot come with you. Whereas transcendental activities, Krishna conscious activities, whatever advancement you make is never lost. It only keeps on accumulating. Of course, it is possible that you can complete 100% in this life. That is what Krishna is going to explain further. But he is telling in the beginning, please understand that there is no loss, even if you don't complete. For whatever reason, you don't complete, there is no loss. So, it is better you work in Krishna consciousness than simply doing some work where you get some material benefit. That is useless. I will take some questions. Do birds, animals, trees too have rebirth? The answer is yes. All of them have rebirth, but there is a difference between a human being being born again in his next life, his or her next life, and all the lower creatures, lower than human, birds, bees, trees, insects, reptiles, snakes, all of them, they taking birth again. What's the difference? In the case of human being, depending on what activities a person has done in this life and what consciousness has been developed at the end of life based on these two things and what desires one has cultivated, one is going to get the next body. So, the next body could either be a body which is degraded life, or one could elevate oneself to a higher form than human, or one could remain on the same human platform. Next body could be human body, could be a demigod body, or could be a insect body, reptile body, dog body, cat body, could be a aquatic body, whatever. Whereas in the case of lower creatures, their evolution of consciousness is next birth is always higher, till they come to the human form. They simply keep on taking birth higher. So, human life is a life of responsibility. Human life is a junction point, because you can go up, you can go down, you can remain on the same level. This is human life. It is a life of responsibility, because human beings have developed intelligence, just like you are asking me this question. Now, a lower creature cannot ask these questions, not because they can't speak our language, they have their own language, please understand. It is explained in the Bhagavatam, even the birds, when they are chirping, they are talking amongst each other, they are conversing with each other. In Vrindavan it is said, Krishna could understand the language of the birds, Krishna could understand the language of the animals, Krishna could understand the language of the cows, and reciprocally, the cows, the monkeys, the birds, the peacocks could understand Krishna's language. Krishna will call the cows by name, they will come running to him. You see? So, it is, they also can speak in a certain way, their language, but they are conversing about where is food, where is shelter, like that. Their conversations are only about their bodily needs. That's all, finished, period, over. Human being can think more than bodily needs. Just like you are asking me these questions. Any human being can ask fundamental questions like, who am I, what is this world, why am I forced to suffer, I don't want suffering. Anybody can ask. So that is human form of life. Developed consciousness, developed intelligence, developed senses. You see, what we can do with our hands. Animals also have some kind of limbs, but they can't use the limbs for anything other than their basic needs. But we can use our hands for, of course we can use it for our basic needs, but we can also use it for so many more things. So that is human life, the difference. Human life taking rebirth is a responsibility to elevate yourself. Okay. Next question. Lord Chaitanya took sannyas at the age of 24. Some may ask whether one can marry today and can renounce marriage early at a young age for higher duties. Good question. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas at a very early age for a higher purpose. But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Acharya. Acharya means they perform two kinds of activities. They are the ideal teachers, that they teach certain principles of practicing spiritual life by their own example. But certain activities they also perform which cannot be imitated, cannot be followed, not supposed to be followed by everyone else, all the followers, no. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traveled throughout the country in 6 years, and the number of people he met, who can do that? Acharyas only can do it. Shankaracharya, he lived only 32 years in this world. He traveled the length and breadth of this country. He established 4 headquarters of his institution, Shankar Matha, in north in Badrikashrama, in east in Jagannath Puri, in south in Sringeri, in west in Dwarka. He established in 4 corners of this country. He traveled by foot, length and breadth of this country. Who can do that? Only he could have done it. Only acharyas do it. Even Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, Ramanucharya, they traveled. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he traveled everywhere. All these acharyas traveled by foot. They didn't go by any conveyance. They didn't go on horseback, chariot. No, they went by foot. So this is extraordinary. So these things we cannot imitate. We should not try to do these type of things. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching us, for a higher purpose, you may not go through the regular varnashrama dharma, brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. That's for common people. But somebody wants to renounce that family life, they should do it before getting married, not after getting married. After getting married, you have to carry out your grahastha duties at the age of 50. After age of 50, you can actually renounce, not before the age of 50. No. Next question. What is meant by soul is situated in the heart of the living being versus soul is floating in 5 kinds of air? Okay. Soul is situated in the heart of the living being. Prabhupada explains that the soul is in the heart region. Because the soul is completely spiritual, you cannot locate the soul by any material method. You cannot fix a material location as the location of the soul. It's in the heart region, means the consciousness is generally rooted or grounded in the body. Therefore, it is said the soul is in the heart region, or soul is inside this body. If somebody's consciousness is Krishna consciousness, then they are not within the body. They are with Krishna in Krishna's personal abode. Though they may be physically in the material world, just like Prabhupada. Prabhupada is in the material world, like he was in Vrindavan, or he was in New York, or he was in Bombay, wherever he was. But once Prabhupada said, wherever I am, actually I am in Vrindavan. I am not in New York, I am not in Bombay. So he is in Vrindavan by Vrindavan consciousness, by Krishna consciousness. So it is a consciousness which determines where the soul is. So generally, most people are in this body consciousness. They are conscious only of their body, that's all. And all bodily possessions and bodily connections like that. My car, my house, my wife, my children, my friends, my enemies, this is my country. It's all centered around his person's body. Therefore, it is said the soul is in the heart region. Soul floating in 5 kinds of air. This is actually not the soul floating. It is the consciousness which is influenced by the 5 kinds of air that are circulating in the body. So our awareness is limited to body only. Generally, our awareness is limited to our body. We are unable to go beyond the body normally if we are completely grounded in our consciousness to this body. If one practices any kind of yoga system, then one can elevate one's consciousness beyond the body to the mind. Just like anybody who starts chanting Hare Krishna can understand, I have got a mind which is different from my body. The awareness increases to the level of the mind. Oh, mind is actually wandering when I am chanting Hare Krishna. It's not fixed on chanting and hearing. So you put an effort or endeavor to fix the mind. So that is possible by practice. That is possible by spiritual practice. Then one can elevate one's consciousness to the level of becoming aware of your intelligence. How your intelligence is working, how your intelligence is able to discriminate, not able to discriminate, able to discriminate. Sometimes the intelligence doesn't work. Just like you're at a loss what to do, some situation you're completely bewildered, or somebody becomes very much nervous. Then their brain, actually it's not the brain, it's the intelligence which is bewildered, which doesn't work. They don't get direction or they don't know what to do. So intelligence, level of intelligence, and the highest level, not the highest level, the next higher level than the intelligence is awareness of yourself, different soul, you as spirit soul, different from your body, your mind, your intelligence. So these are all different levels of awareness or different levels of consciousness. The highest level of consciousness is Krishna consciousness. You become aware or conscious of Krishna, who is seated in your heart as Paramatma. Primarily, he is inside your heart as Paramatma, as a super soul. So that is elevating our consciousness. Otherwise, simply the consciousness is trapped in this awareness of this body only because it is simply conducted by the five kinds of air, prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. It's a technical subject, but still you understand the difference. Is there same birth process of animals like human? Because Kapila Muni explains only for human beings suffering and praying. Okay, this is with reference to something in the Bhagavatam. It is explained by Lord Kapila Muni, that human beings, they undergo the birth process where in the 9 months in the mother's womb, they undergo tremendous amount of suffering, and too much suffering means a pious soul will also pray to the Lord, I want to become free from the suffering. So is there a birth process like this for the animals and Lord? Animals also, they have some, at least the mammals, they have this this thing in the womb, development in the womb, and other creatures from eggs, the lower creatures are born like reptiles and birds and all, and then still lower they have this seeds, plants and trees, they are growing from seeds, and germs, they are coming from a fermentation, from some fermentation, perspiration or some decaying food stuff, from that they are generated, they multiply or they reproduce that way in that medium. So different kinds of births are there, but only in human being it is relevant because the awareness of consciousness is special. It is developed consciousness. So a human being can realize, a child in the womb can realize, I am suffering and I should not, I don't want to suffer. So what should I do? What do I do? So a pious soul will pray to God, because again, developed consciousness. Pious soul means developed consciousness. So can pray to God and say, I don't want to suffer. Kindly get me out of this place, or kindly relieve my suffering. Can pray to God. That's only for human beings, because human beings are developed consciousness. So what Kapila Muni is explaining is only applicable to humans. It's not applicable to, suffering is there, and all the inconveniences of birth and disease and death is there even for the lower creatures, but their consciousness is not so developed to understand this, what is suffering. And what is suffering means? The pain is there, but I am suffering. I require relief. I can seek some remedy for this by some means. Even that thought, that idea, that intelligence, that is not there for the lower creatures. Therefore, it's not relevant that describing the suffering for lower creatures. They have suffering, but it's not relevant. I'll stop here. Thank you. Hare Krishna.